Hey folks, welcome to the Freakopolis Times, our podcast mostly about stuff related to our comics and game shop, the Freakopolis Geekery. We're Ian, Tyler, and Troy, and we run the shop and talk to people all the time, just like in this podcast. Join us and some occasional guests as we talk comics, games, pop culture, and just about anything else that pops up. Remember, while some of our topics may get a little geeky, they change up pretty often, so hang in there and maybe the next one will be more your style. By the way, this podcast is video enhanced on YouTube and Spotify. Check it out that way if you like visuals with your talk. You never know what might show up. Now, let's do the show.
Got the store all Christmased out.
We do, and most of it anyways.
The holiday orbs are afloat.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves those.
I think of them, maybe they're magic, or maybe they're some galactic map.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I was thinking.
They inspire an astral sense, for sure. Astral Christmas, that's what I'm going to have this year.
See, if we played Spelljammer, we could play right underneath these guys.
I'd say we'd have to like
they could be
triple
part
them
of
out.
the map.
We have a monster Spelljammer.
It's like, I'm going to fly there to that one.
We have a monster
That would be
dragon mini for Spelljammer. We could hang it up there and have it.
That would be so cool.
It'd
have to be a little more tricky though.
yeah. Use some fishing wire.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
If he were in flight and didn't have a base,
Right, that's the thing.
what's he doing?
Take a little bit of modding.
Yeah.
But he would sell a whole different aesthetic for that get up there.
Getting them balanced though.
Yeah.
That'd be weird. He's just gonna.
They got those weird energy wings.
Yeah.
Dragon's totally different in Spelljammer.
They're like a mix between Chinese, almost inspired Eastern dragons and like deep sea anglerfish.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's kind of creepy.
Aquatic dragons.
Sure.
Yeah.
They kind of swim in space.
Yeah.
They're not really flapping for lift like normal dragons are.
Right. They have a whole different design that is kind of inspired by the biology of their setting and their environment, which makes sense and leads into our first topic, which is that Wizards has announced that now there shall no longer be any references to race in regards to your options as a player, dwarves and gnomes and halflings and elves and all that kind of stuff. Now these are to be referred to from this point onwards as species.
Right. Which means that they have, like, biological differences.
Yeah, and generally checking the forums and the reactions, I think this was a bit more controversial than it deserves to be, given that species, as far as I'm concerned, is completely correct.
It's a more accurate term used literally, though I feel like we've been using the word race in D&D for 60 years now?
40,
Right.
yeah.
Or 40,
absolutely.
yeah. It's what it means. They're synonymous.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I feel it was a misnomer way back then.
Really?
And they made it sound like essentially, I mean, the implication was that, like, the species was humanoid,
Yeah.
right? And the races were human, dwarven, elven, orcs.
I think
Those were all races.
humanoid's even more broad now, too, because people throw goblins and kobolds and even gnolls and stuff.
Sure,
you know.
those were races.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it makes a lot more sense if you do think of them as species. And it also gets you around that, like, I know there was some political correctness about applying, for instance, stat modifications to a species, well, at the time, a race, and any implication that would have, I guess, connecting to reality.
In some way or another, maybe, but, it's all depends on how you're approaching it. Though, I did see that a lot of people reacted to this renaming, this reclassifying, as saying, that it sounded too clinical for fantasy, too scientific to refer to them as species. But I'm afraid that that's just objectively the case. Is that they're definitely distinct.
Come on, wizards are the ones who catalog this stuff.
Yeah.
They're the scientists of the sort of fantasy world.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
And they're going to have some pretty detailed language for that.
Absolutely.
It seems like species would be well within their concept.
And it is non-offensive.
I've definitely used the term species in game before to refer to the different races, you know.
At the same time, if anyone opts to use the name race, if someone says in one of my future games, I'm playing a cleric, his race is dwarf, I'm not going to crap all over them for that, because that's been the common nomenclature for, over 40 years now. So who's to...
And a lot of the books that they're going to have access to for the foreseeable future are going to show the word race.
Yes. This is a complete implementation will be made in D&D Next, which is the kind of code name for 6th edition or whatever they
D&D 1.
Whatever they come up with in the end there, for sure. And they also did mention, like you had been saying before, the stat changes based on race will likely, I believe it is confirmed that it will no longer be a thing. Which, honestly, as a storytelling mechanism, if you want your gnome to have been raised in a circus as a strongman, then before his adventuring career, I would have no issue with him having a +2 to strength.
Mm-hmm.
And if your Goliath
more
was
backstory focused.
For players, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel like if you take something from the same species, and let's say orcs, right? If you take orcs, don't you feel like they should have a increased strength and constitution?
Just innately?
Yeah.
It might strip you from being able to tell a story where you were the sickly weak orc who learned magic.
But that's for players. You're going back to player. I'm talking about if there's a big community of orcs.
Oh, well, the DM can do whatever they want. It's their game.
Maybe they're super quick and smart.
Yeah, exactly. It just is
but
attempting
that seems like it starts to you don't run into super quick turtles.
Oh,
right? As a species, turtles are
super
slow.
quick turtle monks.
Yeah.
Those are I could see that being a whole monastery.
No, you see, what they're going to attempt to do is introduce more species options. Instead of having an innate +2 to strength just because you're an orc, you'll have a +2 to damage with battle axes and martial weapons because you were raised. It will be you were
in a
raised,
martial society.
Yeah, in a culture that prioritized training you those things from an early age.
Or maybe you pick the woodland orc, choice, and you have proficiency in survival and nature.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really just I think they're going to attempt to hand more power to the players and not necessarily strip any option from the DMs. And at the same time, though, anyone who's super used to playing the really rather refined meta-subjective system of 3rd edition or 3.5,
they give you a lot of options.
They give you a lot of options, but it would be strange to consider, that a gnome would be potentially as strong as an orc. Because an orc barbarian...
Or 8 feet tall.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily be, but it's just... Also consider that the point has been made that player characters are exceptional versions of their particular species, right?
Of course,
They are subject to being unique in their attributes and stats.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all agree on that. I mean, player characters can be whatever it is that the player envisions their backstory and their history and their environment to have created them to be.
As long as it fits in the DM story, for sure.
Right. But there's also general rules and attributes for
your
average species.
Average orc is probably going to be strong and hardy.
Mm-hmm.
Though that doesn't mean there can't be quick ones if your DM wants to mix things up a little bit.
Right.
It makes you wonder what the monster manual will look like.
That's true.
I have no issue with this array of options for players. will it impact the way that stats look in the monster manual at the DM side of things? That's definitely in question. I also wonder, since they seem to be prioritizing permitting player choice, is there going to be like a monster feat list?
I sure hope so. But one of the other things that I kind of have a problem with is it looks like they're trending a lot more towards special abilities that lend themselves towards like bonus action or regular action abilities.
Yeah.
Which, I'm going to be honest, I love to just stack passive feats.
yeah, sure. It's definitely a viable way to build up the character and stuff. And, I think that having a monster feat list is a cool thing to have access to for character flavor, but does ultimately put the system in a position where, players start going, oh, if you wanted to play a ranger that uses 2 weapons, why didn't you take 2-weapon fighting at the first opportunity? Because now you're never going to get ambidextrous before we go up against this stuff, which means that you'll never get, 2-weapon critical range increasing feats before we go up against this kind of, you're already behind the mark because you chose to not take a certain feat.
I'm sure power gamers will
have
a field day.
There's, not as though that doesn't necessarily exist in 5e either. Toughness is as good as it's ever been in 5e. Sometimes when people don't take toughness, you go, you really probably should have taken toughness on that level up, But if there's more options, it may become even more refined in its limitations, ironically,
Mm-hmm.
Though I've never had issue with anyone being like, I play a fat, slow cleric. Often weaknesses define a character much more than their strengths. So it'll be interesting to see what they provide on that end. And that kind of loops back around to, in 3rd edition, when you chose your species, it could negatively affect your attributes. And sometimes that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
To play the Orc Wizard, because you were fighting an uphill battle, know?
All your ability score increases had to go towards
intelligence. Otherwise, you'd be, so far behind the line. But, D&D Next, definitely going to shake things up.
Speaking of new stuff that's coming out, a show that used to be one of our favorites and ended in the 2nd season has returned.
Which one?
Mythic Quest.
Mythic Quest is the best example of wasted potential since Game of Thrones Season 6.
It's a great idea for a show.
Yeah. And
it's totally up our alley.
Yeah.
It calls out perfectly to a very niche audience that would love to see a show like this. And has a great cast, and great sets, and cinematography, and the writing completely flounders, unfortunately. And even here in Season 3, it's as though they don't know what they so obviously have to do to make this a hit.
So let's catch everybody up, though. If you don't know Mythic Quest, it's a series on Apple TV that's now in Season 3. It didn't seem like Season 3 was going to exist at all.
No.
Right?
The end of Season 2 definitely implied that we're gone.
Yeah, it just felt done. And it felt done like in the last couple of episodes of Season 2. The one before the last was starting to feel odd.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one took a really hard right-hand turn or something and just dumped the show.
Seemingly self-destructed, yeah. So it was a surprise to see Season 3 not only in production, but just kind of dropping out of the blue.
Yeah. And I've only watched the first 2 episodes. I think there's more than that out now. I don't know if the whole season is out.
But as a general synopsis, for the many of you who haven't really checked it out, Mythic Quest follows Ian, a video game industry visionary.
Egomaniac.
His lead game engineer, Poppy, and their legions of underlings, kind of like The Office, people working their everyday lives within an MMO production company.
Yeah, a company making a big popular video game called Mythic Quest.
Yeah, the titular Mythic Quest.
And it's very much like it has a lot of inside jokes relating to the game development industry.
And gaming in general, you know,
Yeah.
if you've played World of Warcraft or been around for a little while, at least in the gaming scene, then you might very well appreciate a lot of these references and jokes that they come up with. In particular, absolutely crapping all over monetization schemes.
Oh, yeah. Buying all the skins and...
Yeah, loot boxes and
Yeah.
NFTs and whatever they could get their hands on to just satirize.
They show you a lot of not only the creative and developmental side, but the corporate side and the corporate influence and the capitalism that kind of ends up driving the whole thing, which, you know, it gives you... It's kind of a cool sort of comedy in that way, in that it also gives you insight into the real world of what's going on behind the scenes in your favorite video game.
Sure, yeah.
All the workers or underlings seem stereotypes of, you know, their particular job.
Archetypes.
Yeah, archetypes. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's got this wide cast of, like...
the financial guy, Brad, played by Danny Pudi, who is in Community.
Yeah.
He's one of the big actors. That's one of the names of the show.
Yeah,
pretty much.
totally. He nails it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And his character, being the corporate douchebag that he is pretty much the devil.
yeah, right. Yeah.
He's a bad guy. He has some good line delivery, though.
Oh my gosh,
He
yeah.
sells the role very well and plays a good antagonist that you love to hate, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then there's Ian himself.
Who's Rob McElhaney?
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Who is from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's one of the core cast there. It really, you know, it feels like he is this driving presence behind the entire production, and yet at the same time, his writers do not hand him the best stuff to work with.
No.
The most frustrating thing about Mythic Quest is its obvious glimmers of potential.
Yeah.
Like I had said, it's wasted potential because it feels like it's so close to truly appealing to a group that would love to see a show like this. But instead, it either plays it too safe or goes too far, or I don't know, it never hits the type of hilarity that per se like The Office did, or Parks and Recreation, or the sitcoms that it really is trying to recreate the sense of while being modern and referential towards video games.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's like, in sort of a baseball analogy, it's like they're swinging hard at the pitches, but they keep, like, you know, sort of fouling out. You know, like it does never quite, like, drives down the middle and hits a home run. It's always just kind of like, oh, that's a good try. Something went wrong.
Yeah, and sometimes they are legitimately funny. Get a good chuckle out of you. Sometimes they have a line that's delivered really well or is unexpected and stuff. Like, but it never comes together to be a full package of what, like, coherent character arcs or plot line would be like, you know? And for that reason, it's like they don't have a vision for even the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, sometimes they really just blindside you with stuff.
I think they blindside themselves.
Yeah.
I think they come in and make a new episode and don't have much care about what happened the last time or what's going to happen in the next one.
That seems to be the case, which is pretty frustrating because with that talent, you would imagine them being able to knock it out of the park instead, to continue your analogy. But then you have things on Apple TV that are like Ted Lasso. You know, I think that got like 14, Emmys on TV?
Yeah, they got a lot of awards.
Yeah, consecutive Best Comedy of the Year awards and all sorts of great stuff. Deservedly so. How can there be such a stark difference in writing quality when it's the same company behind them both? At the same time, Mythic Quest, funnily enough, tied in with Ubisoft quite a bit, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, and the first 2 seasons were actually pretty good. Well, the first season and a half.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready to give up on it. I'm gonna watch through the rest of what season 3 has so far. I'm hoping that they pull it together. I think there was something that went on behind the scenes that we never saw.
Yeah.
That made it look like the show wasn't going to continue on, and then it did end up coming back. It lost one of its major characters in the process.
Well, I guess we'll see if they can turn it around.
So when you're a game shop that runs Magic and Magic events, you're inevitably going to wonder if there's anything else out there that challenges where Magic is at, and that offers players a different experience, or what is the competition when you have something that's so dominant?
In general, you find there is no competition.
Right. I mean, you have Pokemon
Sure.
over to the side.
Generally different audience, though,
You've got Yu-Gi-Oh! That is definitely a popularity.
Somehow still a thing.
Yeah, right?
Somehow it is still a thing. It never took off for us, but...
Some people love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so the new thing that Keyforge was out for a while.
Yeah.
And it never quite threatened Magic in any way.
No.
Even though it was developed by the same guy.
Was cool, though.
Yeah, it's very cool. And actually, we may be talking about Keyforge again at some point, because it is... They're trying to return with it. We mentioned that in a previous podcast, and if it becomes a reality, we'll see what we see.
But what you get the sense of is that many have tried to take down the king, and all have failed for about 30 years now.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes you wonder: is this where it's going to be? Is the entire industry going to be defined by what Magic releases next?
I can tell you confidently, based on the way that Hasbro treats places that actually play Magic, no. No, not at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to be running into a problem.
Yeah.
If they keep doing what they're doing to both their really fanatic player base and the shops that make Magic an important part of their business, they're kind of pissing all over both of those.
Yeah.
And so, it definitely seems like there's a room for a conscientious competitor to come into play and at least shake things up.
Yes.
And we think maybe we're seeing that now in Flesh and Blood.
Flesh and Blood, which actually came out in 2019. It's not like this is the first we've heard of it.
Right.
I've played it near about the time it released. It didn't particularly catch my eye. I had a lot of fun, but I couldn't imagine it being a real Magic competitor, Also, there was some happenstance around that time that caused a lot of people to not be playing card games.
Yeah, I don't know why, but everybody just stopped playing social games.
But Flesh and Blood, it's interesting.
Yeah, it seems to have a lot. It has a lot of what Magic has to offer, which is, beautiful artwork, incredible printing, very collectible cards, limited runs of the collectible edition of the cards, value.
They're a New Zealand company, is that?
Yeah, based in New Zealand.
That's cool.
All the cards are evergreen, so you'll always be able to get new releases of the same old cards.
Though, formats will eventually, I'm sure, make it so that there's a more modern kind of constructed deck format.
Yep, and they do. Yeah, they do. Different. There's different formats of play, including multiplayer and pit fighting. They call it, which is that's their massive multiplayer kind of like you can have large groups in that thing. I don't know. That's some weird mechanics.
Sure. Yeah.
Like apparently you can only attack
to your left
players
or right.
that are left and right of you.
Oh, yeah.
But not someone across the table.
That's sometimes
whatever.
in Magic they try and run events like that as well, which is pretty interesting for sure. Though there is kind of this difference in theme between the games. They're both fantasy trading card games, but Magic, you're summoning up all these planar forces and kind of
raising ground out of nothingness.
Yeah. There's this sense of this monster wizard duel going on, whereas Flesh and Blood tries to focus more in on a very personal duel between heroes and villains and the weapons and maneuvers that they make are represented in the cards instead of like monsters and spells. And
Yeah,
stuff.
you kind of have one hero, not necessarily a whole ton of creatures or whatever. You have a hero and
Bunch of equipment.
their equipment, and then the various features and capabilities that they can have.
Now that sounds cool and modifiable and collectible and stuff. But you know what really seems appealing about the game is that they don't treat game stores like garbage.
That seems to be the case. I mean, we'll know soon enough. We're in the process of getting set up to carry that product, which means we need a new distributor and we need to qualify as being the type of store that they want to have it. But where they really don't treat game stores like garbage is they don't flood the market through stores that don't even care.
Yeah, Walmart and Target. Yeah.
You know,
Or online-only stores.
yeah, exactly. You know, those people don't care at all about the players.
Yeah.
And game stores have to care about the players. That's, you know, who we service. And so it's just a whole different mentality from the top down. And it means that there's an ecosystem that we fit into, that players fit into, that card collectors and deck builder types really fit into. It has a certain exclusivity to it that makes it appealing. You know, I think you feel like you end up feeling like you're part of something sort of special that you know about, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've definitely been seeing an increased demand for it, which is pretty interesting. I suppose, given that it's not as easy to get your hands on. And there's going to be a lot that we'll see about our relationship with this company and how they can provide it to us. But there, definitely is an appeal to something that you have to go to a game store for, you know?
Not just because we're a game store, but in general, it's good for the gaming community. I think.
Yeah. We're the people who are going to throw you a bunch of free promo cards and play games with you and stuff,
Yeah,
you know?
give you a place to meet with your friends and actually play.
Like-minded, interested, cool people. Yeah, we're supposed to be a meeting ground for just that sort of thing. And I'll tell you what, the dude checking you out at Target is not going to want to hear it.
When you start telling them about the new Flesh and Blood release.
Yeah, you're like, whatever, man, I hate my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's an important thing that they're doing, the creators of Flesh and Blood. It's important that they treat it that way. It recognizes the importance of game stores in that overall system.
No, sure.
And it makes sure the game stores are around to provide that for the players. I mean, it's bizarre, you know, that Hasbro believes that basically, why don't they just make whatever the game stores are making instead?
Yeah.
And people can play like at their house or whatever.
Yeah, Hasbro would literally try and throttle the necks of game stores for no particular reason, it appears. I'll tell you that in the past few years, our margin on Magic has only shrunk.
That's true.
And that is not going to help its future in being supported around here. Not that we're, you know, the game as a whole, I thoroughly enjoy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Same with the community. Nothing against them. It's the suits at the top who want constant profit margins to be increasing year after year. Well, where are they going to find that margin but in the people they distribute to?
Yeah, and the people that already are buying the product.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the suits at Hasbro don't play this game.
No.
Don't go to game stores.
Don't care.
They don't care. They're spreadsheet people. They're you know, they
need their stocks to go up.
Yep, they're concerned about the profits. And, you know, that doesn't, you know, work where the rubber hits the road of them sort of extracting every dollar out of the players, out of the game stores.
Yeah. You certainly get the inclination that this is not the case with the Flesh and Blood guys, of course.
Yeah.
Like we've said a few times, we haven't shook hands with them yet, but they're pitching us on this idea that they actually do care, and that is a fresh notion.
You know, we're looking at it.
Yeah, it's caught our eye.
And that about does it for this one. If you like hanging with us, please subscribe through your favorite podcast directory. Join our Discord and check out our shop, the Freakopolis Geekery. See you next time.